Hello and welcome to Marycast. This is Dr. Mark Miravalle. We are shooting on location in Amsterdam, Holland, at the place where the apparitions of the Lady of All Nations first took place. You'll see over my right shoulder the room, the apartment where the apparitions began, March 25th, 1945, in the presence of Father Frehe, the Visionaries spiritual director, and her two sisters. Now, several apparitions took place in this apartment complex, and I want to read to you a bit of a message where Ida is directed by Our Lady from this location to what at that time was a meadow, and it is the location where Our Lady specified she wants a church built, a church of the Lady of All Nations built in her honor. So I want to read from a March 20th, 1953 message, and then we will enact how it took place with Ida, where Our Lady literally took her down the street, at least the beginning of taking her down the street and directing her to the place where the future church would be. And I read from this March 20th, 1953 message. I see the Lady of All Nations standing before me. She says, "Say that the time has now come. The time is here, the time in which the world shall know that I have come here as the Lady of All Nations. I want this to be made known to the whole world. Tell this to the Pope's sacristan. Nations of Europe, unite. It is the Lady of All Nations who is calling this out to you." The Lady waits again for a long time, gazing into the distance. Then she says, "In order to prove that I am the Lady of All Nations, I said great powers will fall. Political economic struggles will arise. Watch out for the false prophets. Pay attention to meteors. There will be disasters. There will be natural disasters. We are facing great decisions. We are facing heavy pressure." So you see, it's a powerful message where Our Lady is predicting what we now see to be, once again, the headlines of the 21st century, and particularly 2011 and following: economic crisis, natural disasters. Even makes reference to meteors, some type of atmospheric element in the messages. Now, she then talks about true peace. She says, again, heavy pressure is hanging over the whole world. Your enemy is lying in wait. Church of Rome, seize your opportunity. It is modern humanism, realism, socialism, and communism which has the world in their grip. I then see the world with all those groups of people on it, and so to speak, an enormous hand clasping it. The Lady says, "Listen to the Lady who wants to be your mother. Pray, nations, that your sacrifice may find favor with the Lord. Pray, nations, that the true Holy Spirit may come. Pray, nations, that the Lady of All Nations may be your advocate." Then the Lady says very slowly and clearly, "And now the Lady of All Nations promises to grant true peace, but the nations, together with the church, understand well, together with the church, will have to pray my prayer." Now, something interesting takes place where, as I mentioned, Our Lady directs Ida. So we're going to do at least the first part of this as it takes place in the message. Ida writes, "Now the Lady pauses, and as it were, she is changing her place. Then she says, 'Now follow me where I am going.' It is as if I am going along a road together with the Lady." Now the road she goes down is the road we're going to go down now. It's radically different than the road, of course, that Ida went down with Our Lady, but it is heading to the same direction. She says, "We arrive at a meadow and a few trees. I see the Lady standing as in a haze above that meadow," she says. And from here, we're going to go to that meadow, which is obviously no longer a meadow. It's in the heart of Amsterdam. But what better location for a Church of All Nations than in the heart of a city, Amsterdam, which is known to be the most universal of all cities. There's over 200 nationalities, national groups represented in the city of Amsterdam, so truly appropriate for the Lady of All Nations. So we're going to go from here to that location. We are now standing at the location that Our Lady brought Ida to, and I want to pick up with the March 20th, 1953 message as we were reading it previous. Ida says, "It is as if I am going on a road together with the lady. We arrive at a meadow and a few trees. I see the lady standing as in a haze above that meadow. She says, 'You see me standing here in the meadow.' Suddenly I recognize the meadow as a familiar piece of land at the Wandelweg, near the place where we live. This is where the new church is going to be." Well, obviously, there's nothing resembling a meadow now, over a half century later. In fact, this area is known as the Rise Center. It's a convention center, which has been the location of the International Prayer Day of the Lady of All Nations on several year occasions. It is now, as I mentioned, in the heart of the city. It is developed, but I think with a little examination could be well transformed into a great church. I want you to hear Our Lady's description of what she wants the church to be, because along with the request for the world to pray the prayer of the Lady of All Nations, for the Pope to lead the world in praying the prayer of the Lady of All Nations, the proclamation of the dogma, this request for the Church of All Nations, the Lady of All Nations, is also one of Our Lady's requests. She says, "This is where the new church is going to be. It is as if I am entering that church with her." The Lady says, "On the high altar, the sacrifice with the cross, the daily miracle." I now see the high altar. The Lady points at the tabernacle, which has a small crucifix on it. She says, "At the same level to the left, the gospel side will be the altar of the Lady of All Nations. On the epistle side, the altar of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Notice well at the same level as the sacrifice." Now the Lady points again to the high altar, and I see the three altars adjoining on the same level, as if they were forming one large altar. Behind the side altars, I see the images again, but vaguely and veiled. Then the Lady says, "I have chosen the Dominican Fathers for this. The donor shall place the image there. The image has to come to Amsterdam soon. I have chosen Amsterdam as the place of the Lady of All Nations. It is also the place of the sacrament." Understand this well. What does she mean by that? Well, throughout the messages, she will talk about the fact that she comes here in Amsterdam because Amsterdam is the city of the Eucharist. Now, many today might say, how could Amsterdam, in its reputation for impurities and drugs and whatnot, be the city of the Eucharist? Well, in March of 1345, there was a great Eucharistic miracle in Amsterdam that had a major part in changing the course of European history in the sense of having Amsterdam become a pilgrimage center. That was based on a Eucharistic miracle and then a Eucharistic procession that would go through the streets of Amsterdam every year on the anniversary of the miracle. 600 years later, in 1945, from 1345 to 1945, Our Lady appears to Ida with a message of being the Lady of All Nations, but also a clearly Eucharistic message. She wants the sacrifice, the daily sacrifice, returned and respected. She wants a church of all nations built here. And in the messages, she gives even more description of what the church is supposed to be. So in many ways, it's very reminiscent of the great prophecy of St. John Bosco, that it would be the pillars of the Eucharist and our Blessed Mother that would see the church through a time of great difficulty. And as we saw with John Paul II, with declaring a year of the Eucharist, with declaring a year of the Rosary, these two themes, the Eucharist and the Mother, are prominent both in public revelation and development of the church and in private revelation. But here at the Apparitions of the Lady of All Nations and at the location, according to Our Lady, of the future church of Our Lady of All Nations, Our Lady wants the Eucharist prominent and reverently exposed, and the sacrifice be properly hailed. So on site, this is Mark Miravalle, part of our series on the Lady of All Nations and the site of the future church of the Lady of All Nations, from the messages, the approved messages in Amsterdam, Holland. Thanks for being with us. God bless. Of the